Welcome to Creature Geek, the special effects makeup podcast. From a fan and pro perspective, I am Len Peralta.
And I am Frank Guido.
And we have an incredible guest in tonight. Very excited to have him in. I'm just going to get right into the introduction here. If you aren't familiar with the work of today's guest, then why are you even listening to this podcast? He is considered by many to be FX royalty, working on some of the most iconic creature designs and innovations ever to be put on film. His resume includes projects like Star Wars, American Werewolf in London, for which he won the inaugural Academy Award for Best Makeup and Hairstyling, Michael Jackson's Thriller, Harry and the Hendersons, Men in Black, and many, many more. He is a living legend, and we are humbled to have him on our little tiny podcast show. Would you please welcome to Creature Geek, the incredible Rick Baker.
But he was talking about me. I was thinking, who is this guy? I can't wait to hear him. When I found out it was me, I was a little disappointed.
Oh my gosh. Totally geeking out on you right now. I have to kind of bring myself down a little bit still. But it is, thank you so much for doing this. We're so happy to have you on the show. So
I'm going to get $20 for it.
I have it in the drawer here.
Yeah.
For everybody watching the video, here's the $20 bill that I painted like Rick. And so that's his payment for getting on here. We started a Twitter conversation, and that's what it takes to get Rick, apparently.
Yeah, I said, what would it take? I said $20. So
$20 to get on the show, and now you're here.
Does that mean I have to pay all of our stupid guests from now on? Jeez. Thanks, Rick.
Stupid guest.
Well, you have to alter the $20 bill for each one of our guests. So
yeah.
Well, I guess that Patreon money is going to go to something good then.
Let's talk about makeup.
No, I want to know before we even get into that.
Okay.
Everybody wants to know, why did you close down the shop and retire?
Why did I close down the shop and retire? Well, first of all, I'm old. I'm 60. I'm getting close to 66.
Whoa.
Yeah.
66 is the new 26.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like
tell my
you're
body
just
that.
Started.
Yeah. And, I've been doing it, I've been doing makeup since I was 10. I mean, first of all, it's funny on my Twitter, people are saying, you can't retire, it's like, I'm not retiring from doing creative things. I just retiring from the film business. And, the problem was I ended up building a really big studio and a big business, and it was kind of too big for the way the business is now. I had a 60,000 square foot building, state of the art place to work, but, the jobs weren't paying for it, and it was depleting my bank account. And I just thought, it's time to get out.
Yeah. The last show you did in there was Maleficent. You could have done that in your garage.
Yeah, exactly. So it was, and before that was Men in Black 3. And it was like, something like a couple of years in between where it sat empty and just emptied my bank account. So it just seemed like the right thing to do. I was just, I got to live through the golden age of this stuff and made my mark. And jobs, they were wanting me to give competitive bids for things, and I knew I couldn't compete because I paid, I had hired the top people and I did it the way I thought was right. And it wasn't about just doing it the cheapest way possible, which is what they wanted. And so it was just time. And there were a lot of things I wanted to do for myself, and I wanted to do them when I still could, so.
Yeah. Now, did you make a run at Star Wars before you closed it down?
I would have thought that would have been a good way to go out.
Yeah.
And my daughter used to work at JJ's company at Bad Robot, and JJ's a fan.
Yeah.
And we had talked some about it. And I had hoped to actually do it with Dave Elsey, who I did the Wolfman with, because Dave did the last Star Wars, I did the first. I just thought it would be kind of cool,
Bookend it.
But it wasn't to be. They wanted to do. They've got those 10 years worth of films in England and setting up a studio there, and I didn't want to live in England for the rest of my life. But I loved what he did with it, and I thought they did a great job on all the creature effects and stuff.
Yeah, there was a lot of fun stuff in there. Yeah, there was a robot that was like walking out of where Han Solo was walking in, and when I saw the trailer, it didn't register to me that was a guy on stilts in a robot suit.
Oh yeah,
that one was fun.
Oh cool. Yeah, I'll have to see it again. I've only seen it once.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of old like cool throwbacks to Macquarie paintings and stuff like that.
Yeah,
great.
Well, I had a lot of faith that JJ was going to do it right, you know, and I think he did.
Plus, there were a lot of creatures in that show that were very reminiscent of Rick Baker creatures. I feel. Did you feel that way? That you were able to see some of yourself in the film, even though you didn't work on it?
Yeah, I saw a few things that look kind of like some of the things that I did. One in particular was a mask that I just kind of threw in there. You know, we had very little time and money to do our part of the cantina thing, and I said, you know, to George, I've got some masks you can use, and one was it was a concept for a Frankenstein that I did, which was this kind of bald old weird guy that you could kind of see through his skin a little bit, and I saw a guy that looked like him, and but yeah, it's
cool.
Yeah.
Giving a little homage.
Yeah, exactly.
Would you have done stuff differently, like design wise and like?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking a lot about that because I mean, you kind of want it to be Star Wars and be in the Star Wars universe, but you know, all the stuff that we did they were slip rubber masks. You know, I mean, the way the whole job came about was my friends Dennis Murin and Ken Ralston were doing the visual effects, and George had already completed the film in England and was back in Van Nuys, you know, doing the visual effects at what later became ILM, and he wanted to embellish on the stuff that they had in the cantina scene, and asked Dennis if he knew anybody that could make masks. And he goes, yeah, I do, as a matter of fact. And so they called me in, and George showed me on a flatbed and edited the scene as it existed with Stuart Freeborn's great stuff. And I just got so excited to be part of something like that. And he just wanted to add to it. So we did, I think, 30 aliens for it, you know, in like a few weeks. You know, so
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So what are you, now that you're retired, how are you filling your time? What are you doing with yourself now?
Checking his Twitter messages.
It's at the Rick Baker, if anybody wants to follow me. It's it's funny. I have no problem filling my time. The problem I have is there's just not enough time in the day. You know,
Still.
Yeah. I'm a creative person, and I'm the happiest when I'm doing something creative. And one of the things about the film business, it was very creative, but it was creative where you're doing work for somebody else. And part of the problem was too, the film industry now is so producer driven, and there were so many producers that had opinions and would basically eat up your pre-production time, and not it became not fun, so I just want to make stuff that for myself and have fun, and that's what I've been doing. So I paint, I sculpt, right now I did a puppet that I was going to do this Frankenstein, this little short film with a kind of a Jack Davis inspired Frankenstein character. It was a rod puppet. I was going to do rod removal and with CG sets, and now I kind of hate to admit it, but I think it's going to turn into entirely CG film.
Oh.
You're the harbinger of your own demise.
Yeah, I know.
Now you're on the other side of the table.
The funny thing is that
CG's even taking away your retirement.
Yeah, damn it, those fucking CG guys, they destroyed my life. But the funny thing was, I mean, as I was having fun modeling the environments and rendering that stuff out, and then putting the puppet in, it was a problem with matching the camera moves and the lighting and everything else. And I thought, well, I'll do a digital double for some wide shots. Mm-hmm. And I did this digital version of the puppet, and I can just do more with it, and I can put it in the same lighting.
So if anybody needs a visual effects supervisor, they should message you at the Rick Baker on Twitter.
Well, I'm learning as I'm going, but it's actually looking pretty cool. I just rendered a quick version last night of something to look at, of the puppet in the digital set, mm-hmm. and had it going in and out of different lighting and things like that. And the puppet itself, the hands were fixed, and I was going to do a little mechanized hand, but the hand's only like this big, So,
yeah.
And frankly, it's a lot easier to do it digitally, And I have a
So everybody in makeup school right now, quit and go to Noman.
Yeah, well, no, but there's still, if I did it as a makeup, if I was doing people in makeup, it would be a different story.
Yeah.
But there was a whole nother puppet to create, in that, I 3D printed the puppet and then like remolded the 3D print and then get a wax cast and clean that up. And I mean, I worked in that puppet for a really long time, printed all the little joints, put it all together. And I'm glad I did it. I had fun doing it,
Yeah.
but I just think now, because I'm doing the film by myself, and the puppet really took 3 people to work right, and so I was doing like 3 separate passes and trying to combine them together into one, and it's just, for me to do it by myself digitally, it just seems to be the way to go.
So do you find it the same amount of enjoyment doing it digitally as you do building the practical puppet?
Yes, in a different way. I mean, again, I like learning new things, and I am learning as I'm going along, and I didn't really go to school for this kind of stuff. And
You didn't go to school for any of this stuff.
no, I hardly even went to school. That's why I can't write or read very well.
So everybody drop out of Gnomon now.
Yeah. And my math skills are really bad. I mean, that was the other problem with the puppet. I started with it as a ZBrush model.
Yeah.
And I printed it the size that I did, this one size, and thought I'd do a bigger one for like close-ups. But after I printed this bigger head, I really just kind of said, well, I just kind of guessed, I'll make it this big. Oh, yeah, I like that. Then it's like, now I got to print the hands, and I go, I don't know how to do the math to figure out, the size of the little hands were this big,
Yeah.
and the size of the little head was this big, and the size of the big head is this big. How do you figure out how much to scale up the hands? So I just figured I'll do it digitally. It kind of does.
So you
math for
talked a little bit about the how you actually made the physical puppet. What are you using to do the digital stuff? What, just like, talk a little bit of shop that way. Like, what are your tools in that toolbox?
Okay, well, I started. I mean, I was always interested in digital. Well, first of all, I mean, I started using Photoshop when it first came out.
Thank you, Russell Brown.
Yes, in the late '80s, and fell in love with it. Fell in love with working digitally until the computer crashed and I lost what I worked on because I wasn't very good about saving things. But I learned to do that now. But I called it no fear painting. In the old days, when I painted, something that was for a design, a lot of times it wouldn't be exactly what I had in my head, but the painting itself was good. And then it's like, do I risk screwing up a good painting and to try to make it look more what I want it to look like, or do I leave it alone? And I've done both. I've screwed up paintings, I've changed them and made it better. But digitally, I mean, it's no fear painting. You can try things. You save it as one thing. You do something else, and I think the biggest problem I have now is you have too many choices, and I think that's become a problem in the industry.
That's
as well.
the problem for the producers.
Yeah, it is. I mean, they always say, do another one, do one in between this one, do one in between that one. And instead of having 2 drawings to choose from, you have 150 or more, and and sometimes the changes are so subtle, it's hard to even see what they are,
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I love the idea that you could just try things and do things, and I did, and it freed me up creatively. So I thought I wanted to explore modeling in the digital realm. And I got, at that time, I got an Omega computer that had Lightwave on it. And it had this video toaster thing that you could do a lot of cool effects with, which I liked. But modeling with points and polygons, it just didn't work for me, to try to make something organic by putting these little dots and making little boxes and stuff. So I just said, yeah, that's not for me. And then I heard about ZBrush.
Yeah.
And I tried it, and first it took me a little while to figure out how to make it work right. But
That's the hardest thing for me on ZBrush too. The interface is really tough.
it's tough, but it does things that you can't do any other way, kind of, So, but once I did, I just eventually, downloaded a tutorial on how to do something and do a head, and then I got it right away, and I loved it. It was so organic to me. It was so much more like sculpting. You take basically a ball of digital clay and push it into shape and carve into it and stuff. And I mean, I've been doing that from, I don't know, I forget what year it was. I started that probably around 2000, maybe before that. But loved it. And I told the guy, I contacted the guy that wrote the software, and I told him I loved him and wanted to have his children. Because,
and so that's how your second daughter came.
Yeah. No, because it was just he's O'Farrell, the guy that wrote the program, is an artist and a programmer, which are usually two different kinds of people. But I mean, a lot of traditional 3D people at first were put off by the interface, and it's not like traditional 3D. But I just loved it.
Well, that's cool.
So I started with ZBrush, and then ZBrush and the older versions of ZBrush, the rendering wasn't that great, and the light, you couldn't light it. You had limited ways to light it and stuff. And then I heard about this program called Modo, and it was a better renderer, and it was real 3D space, and you could set the lights, and you could look at it from different views and stuff. And so I started playing with Modo. And again, it was a point and polygon modeling thing, which was a little easier for me to grasp after getting used to ZBrush too. And then you can import stuff from ZBrush and retopologize it and stuff. So I started using Modo, and I'm using Modo I created the whole this Frankenstein laboratory and exterior scenes and stuff and all the machines in Modo, and rendered the backgrounds and stuff in Modo. And now I've got the Frankenstein puppet in Modo as well.
Yeah, if you haven't seen Rick's Twitter, he's been posting pictures of the Frankenstein sculpt, and it looks fantastic. It looks really, really amazing. And you do a lot of painting as well. Are you doing all your painting digitally, or are you still in the real world in that realm?
Both. I like to paint digitally mainly because of the speed and the no fear aspect of it. Like I said,
Right.
And what's great is if you want the painting to be a little more contrasty, it's really just going like this and
moving a slider.
Yeah, but if you're doing it with a real world painting, it's like you paint your whites,
Right.
lights lighter and your darks darker, and but there still is something I do enjoy smearing paint on a canvas or a piece of masonite or whatever, and so I mean it depends on how I feel on a day. I actually haven't painted. The last thing I painted was a painting of my dog for my wife's birthday like a year ago. So it's been about a year since I've done painting, and I'm kind of really itching to do that. Again.
You have a cat? Maybe your wife has a cat picture.
No, I'm allergic to cats. I'm allergic to dogs too, but we have a Bichon, which is kind of an allergy safe dog.
So you wanted to talk about some makeup history stuff.
Yeah, it's funny how fast people are forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
Who
are you again?
Yeah, I know. I forgot myself. It's like but I mean, there's some makeup artists in the history of the industry that are instrumental and really important, and I think we should talk about them some. I mean, and
Sure.
it goes back. Like a lot of people don't know the name Cecil Holland. Do you know Cecil Holland?
Cecil B. Holland?
No, just Cecil.
Is that
Holland.
a different one?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, no.
See,
Well, there's another one.
doesn't know Cecil Holland. I don't know if his middle initials B. Maybe it is.
Okay. Enlighten me.
Yeah, who is Cecil Holland?
Cecil Holland was a makeup artist. It was like a peer of Lon Chaney Sr.'s. And in fact, from what I've heard from a number of people, is that he actually did Chaney's makeups. I'd like to think what he did was maintain the makeups, that Chaney did them, but especially in the, cotton and collodion and nose putty and things that Chaney used. They didn't. I'm sure it needed a lot of touch up, and when he's acting, and it would be nice to have somebody to maintain it. So I think that's what Cecil did. But Cecil wrote one of the first makeup books, and Lon Chaney Sr. actually wrote the introduction to it. But Cecil was, a great early makeup artist, like in the 20s, and was the head of MGM makeup department in the beginning days. Then it was later taken over by Jack Dawn. Do you know who Jack Dawn is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jeff Dawn's dad, grandpa.
Jeff
Dawn's a makeup artist now.
Yes,
with dad or grandpa?
Jeff is. It's his grandpa, I think. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. But yeah, the Dons, there was a number of Dons that, but yeah, Jack Don took over. But in Jack, from what I understand, because when I was working on King Kong in the 70s, in mid 70s, I was working at MGM, and I was in the old makeup department, what used to be William Tuttle's department, that I think was Cecil Holland's department before that, and it was abandoned then. And one day, this old, kind of strange makeup artist by the name of Johnny True came in, and he said, "What are you doing here? And who are you?" And I go, my name's Rick. I'm working on King Kong, and I'm making stuff in the lab here, And he goes, "Oh, it's good to see somebody in the lab again, And I started talking to him, and he had been at MGM since Wizard of Oz. He worked on Wizard of Oz as basically a portable makeup table. He had like the cigarette trays that you would see in old films when girls walk around with a strap and hold this thing. That was like he had a thing like that, but it was a makeup table. It had makeup supplies on it. So in between takes, he'd run out there. So the makeup artist would have a table right there, and he could touch the person up on set, which I think is a brilliant idea, actually. Wow. Yeah. And he like knew a lot of history about the studio. In fact, he was the first guy that ever showed me pictures of test makeups from Wizard of Oz that weren't published at the time, and Buddy Ebsen as the Tin Man, and all these different things. And he just told me a lot about the history of the studio, which I thought was great. And Jack Don, they said the great thing about Jack was he really wanted to advance the state of the art, and he got into, he didn't want to just do things out of the kit, and they started making appliances. And the first appliances they made were actually made out of gelatin. It was the same formula that they made molds out of, which they used to call glue molds. That was gelatin. It's like gelatin with glycerin in it and stuff. And so they, on the Good Earth, they did all these Asian makeups on Caucasian actors, and they did the iTab appliances out of gelatin, cast in a mold, so they were the same every day. And the Norins, Gustav Norin and Joseph Norin.
I don't know that name.
You don't know them either?
No.
See, now these guys were really important to the art of makeup. They were actually, I think they came from an architectural sculpture background. And they knew about sculpting and mold making, but they were the ones that kind of developed the mold process to make these appliances, and like the little kind of like the Dick Smith kind of little round molds with just a cheek on it and stuff. Yeah. They did those. They were the first people to do those kind of molds. Way back when. Did
they do them out of dental stone also, or were they still doing the?
I'm not sure what they were. It might have been dental stone in those days. Yeah, but they were very important to that thing. But they also, I heard a story. This was Charlie Sram. Do you know who Charlie Sram is?
Yeah, he's the one that did the foam.
Yes, but he was the lab bandit during the William Tuttle regime.
Yeah.
At MGM, and I asked him. He also played the lion's makeup in the Wizard of Oz, and I asked him a bunch of Wizard of Oz questions, and he said that the bald caps for because there was a ton of bald caps in that film. The people in Oz had bald caps on, and the Munchkins had bald caps, and they made the bald caps out of old nitrate film. They actually got old nitrate film, and he said they got a big old coffee can, one of those big kind of coffee cans. They put the nitrate film in it, and they put acetone and MEK in it, and it would melt into this slurry of plastic. And then they would, they had the cap forms, and they would brush on this plastic nitrate film, and, MEK acetone mixture. And so they had a crew that worked all night that would just paint caps. In the morning, they'd pull off these caps, and they'd put these fresh caps on the little people. And
was it flexible at all, or rubbery? Or
a little bit. I'm sure they put some kind of plasticizer in it.
Wow.
But he said they would shrink. They would continue to shrink through the course of the day, and to where they would just pop off their heads at a certain point. And he said, at first, he says it was a good thing because it shrunk and got tighter and looked good. But then all of a sudden, it's like Munchkins, or these people, Oz, all these things were popping.
Did you ever find out what the time? Like what was the time that they would get to the point that would pop?
Yeah, I don't know what the exact time frame.
That's when Martini Shot got coined, because they started drinking once those things started getting tight.
But also, I mean, you know, and like I said, with the gelatin appliances that they did for the Good Earth, the problem was gelatin melts when it gets hot, and they, you know, they were film outdoors, and you know, it can get hot in California, and all of a sudden, these eyelids were melting and stuff. So they, you know, foam rubber came about, and another person a lot of people don't know about, a guy named George Bow.
He's the one that did the foam after Charles Sram.
Before Charlie Sram. Before. That's where Charlie got the formula from, and I'll tell you that story too. But George was one of the inventors of foam latex, and he made a foam latex specifically for makeup purposes that was amazing, and it's better than anything we have today.
Really? Yeah. What was different about it? Better than Roland stuff?
Yeah, I can't describe it. I don't, you know, it's funny because there was, during the time when I started getting in the industry in the 70s, you know, there was the East Coast, you know, Dick Smith, and the West Coast of John Chambers. And Dick Smith used the George Bow foam, and he was like the only person that used it. And Chambers and all those guys used the Uniroyal foam. Uniroyal started mass producing foam rubber to make mattresses, basically.
Yeah.
It wasn't made for makeup purposes. And Chambers, I think, would try things like putting castor oil in it to try to plasticize it more and stuff. But there was this kind of professional jealousy thing where they wouldn't use the George Bow foam. George, unfortunately, you know, was kind of an old like alcoholic, and he apparently used to stand up at union meetings and talk a whole bunch, and people kind of didn't like him that much, so they didn't want to, you know, give him money for his foam, you know. But his foam was far superior because I used both. You know. I started, the first foam I ever ran was the Uniroyal foam, and then when I got Bow foam, which to me, you know, you had to buy 5-gallon kit, and back in those days that would last you like years, you know. You would do just the odd nose, you know, here and there or something, you know, and it was kind of expensive, but when I first ran it, it felt so much more like rubber,
and you back then you would run it in that like tall beaker, like a tall metal
beaker
thing.
George's technique, he had a metal beaker, and he had this little weird
like a spiral looking whisk
thing, but it was, I think, a far superior foam. The problem was it was only Dick Smith and me that were using it, and this was at a time when big films weren't happening, you know. So, you know, I'd buy 5 gallons a year maybe, and so would Dick, you know, and it didn't seem to be a very good business for George to have. And unfortunately, George, you know, I used to love going to see George. So I'd go to his house is in Laurel Canyon as you start to go up the hill from the valley, and he decided he wanted to try to get back in the business, and he had his son build a little workshop next to his garage, and the problem was nobody wanted George. I don't know how old George was at that point, probably as old as I am now. But you know, like I said, he had lost his voice box from cancer, so he got talk like that, you know, and drank too much, and you know. But he had great stories. Again, I would love talking to him about things. But he was the guy that ran. A lot of people know his brother Gordon was the head of Warner Brothers makeup department for a long time. He was the one that got credit, but George was like the lab guy, and the guy that, you know, was the chemist that came up with all kinds of things. One of the things he came up with was that tattoo ink stuff.
Really?
Yes, for the film Illustrated Man, where they had to do a full body tattoo on Rod Steiger. He invented what became the skin illustrator and tattoo inks. Fred Blau, who was the first guy to commercially start producing that stuff, was one of the makeup artists on Illustrated Man, and he learned the formula from George, who invented it. You know,
very cool.
And it's become like a staple. I mean, everybody has those things in their kits now. You know, and you use it for everything now. But George was the inventor of that. You know, people don't know these.
And
things.
Skin Illustrator came because Kenny Myers wanted George to make different colors, and George wouldn't make different colors.
Not
or
George.
Fred.
Yeah.
Wanted Fred to make different colors, and he wouldn't tweak stuff. So Kenny made his own.
Yeah. So now V. Neal has one.
Yeah, everybody's got one.
But George was like this amazing chemist. And he had all kinds. He had adhesives. He had sealers. He had all these things that he invented.
He's kind of like Vin Kehoe. He's got like a little bit of everything too.
Yeah, a lot of that. I think some of those things were kind of George-based formulas.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But the problem was, like I said, he drank too much. Nobody wanted him, and what happened was he, in a drunken stupor one night, he decided to put his house on the market, and it sold the same day that he put it on the market. He
undervalued it.
Yeah, and then he was faced with the fact of like, now I got to move. What am I going to do?
Oh no!
So his solution was he killed himself. And,
Oh no!
And fortunately, I did a commercial. I used to work at this place called Cascade that did a lot of commercials, and David Allen worked there, and Dennis Muir worked there, Ken Ralston worked there. We all, Lane Liska, a lot of guys that worked on Star Wars worked there. It was one of the few places that did stop motion and visual effects kind of stuff, and they were great at doing forced perspective things and stuff. There's an old guy named Phil Kellison who was the head of the department there. He was a great old effects guy. But anyways, I did this commercial for Vic Sinex where they wanted this guy. It was this actor named Greg Malavy, and he said, my head's all blocked up, and you look at him, he had a square head. They wanted it perfectly flat, and I go, well, I can't make it perfectly flat if he's got a nose and stuff. But I did this big blockhead thing, and they were going to do a second commercial, and when the second commercial was happening, they called me, and I was just about to get on a plane to go to Iraq to work on The Exorcist with Dick in that opening sequence. So I recommended Charlie Sram to do the makeup, and I brought Charlie the appliances, and he had the face piece was the foam latex, and he went, "What is this? This is great." And I go, "It's the bow foam." And he goes, "Bow foam." Everybody in Hollywood said, "Oh, the bow foam's just the uterine foam with castor oil." I said, "It isn't. It's completely different. I run them both.
Yeah,
I know they're different." So he actually said, "Well, I'm going to maybe I'll just get some of the foaming agent and try it with the uterine foam." So he went to George's house, and George was literally dumping stuff in the gutter.
Oh no!
All his foam rubber stuff, and this is like the day before he killed himself or something. And he, Charlie said, "Well, you can't do that, and he goes, "No, nobody uses this stuff, blah blah blah. I'm done with this." And Charlie got him to he rattled off kind of where he got the components milled and stuff, and basically what was in it. And fortunately, Charlie got that information because then George was gone. And what happened around that same time, and this was a scary time for a makeup guy that did effects makeup, is Uteroil decided to stop making their rubber too. And it was like, what are we going to do? What are we going to use? No George Bow foam, no Uteroil. And then
that'd be like if Polytech and Smooth On both decided to close up shop.
Yeah, which who knows? What's going to happen? But the fortunately, then Uteroil decided they opened up this new division. They did R&D foam, which I thought was crap, but that at least was an option. And Charlie then started doing Windsor Hills foam, which was his version of the George Bow foam. The big disadvantage to George foam was that it had something in it that oxidized and changed colors. So your foam rubber piece, if you left it out into the air and would start to darken, it eventually would turn black.
Really?
Yeah. But if you kept it out of the light and in a box or something, it'd be fine. But I convinced my friends that worked at Cascade who did Pillsbury Doughboy commercials, which I did. I made molds for the Doughboy and ran foam for the Doughboy and stuff like that.
So you were there when Phil Tippett was there then?
Yeah,
he worked on those.
Right? He was. We were all kind of in and out. None of us were like on a staff. Just called people in. Is that But I said, let me make it out of the bow foam because it's so much better. So I made a Doughboy out of the bow foam, and back in those days they painted the Doughboys with this stuff called Blackout Paint, which was this horrible toluene based stuff, and it wasn't very good paint, and it was deadly, and it really built up a lot.
So it was really good.
Yeah, and it would buckle and stuff. But anyways, what happened during the course of animating the Doughboy, the foam color started to oxidize, and the Doughboy started changing color. So,
is it like maybe from all the fingerprint, like from touching and stuff?
No, I think it was just it just did what it does. It would oxidize and change color, and it would show through the paint. So they ended up that didn't work out very well. So, but those were some names of important people in makeup.
Fancy. I was just trying to click on my computer. I'm pretty sure I have that Cecil Holland makeup book. I think I have. Somebody scanned it and and I think I have it.
Bill Forsh, maybe?
No.
Oh, okay.
I think it came from Todd Canatelli.
Oh, okay. I have a copy that Bill Forsh scanned for me.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, there are these people that, like, and, Charlie is not that well known of a name, but he was the one that he was the lab guy there. And
You know what's really funny? When I worked up in San Francisco for a little while, and people up there, like especially ex-ILM guys, they all refer to foam latex as Sram. They they don't say foam latex. They just say, "Oh, run it in Sram."
yeah, well, the thing that I was really kind of sad about was, after George killed himself and Charlie started producing the foam, the business changed and things that we all started getting bigger jobs where we needed more foam rubber, and it became quite a good business for Charlie. And if George just would have lasted a little longer, it just really a sad thing.
The foam latex, like, it's funny if you think about like the whole foam latex like arc in the business, like how it went from there, and then what was it, Tom McLaughlin was formulating it, and then the Bermans had Tom's formula, and then Gil Moscow had that formula, and then Tom McLaughlin came back and made it over at Monster Makers, and now Monster Makers has that formula, and somewhere in that mix, the Paramount foam was also Tom McLaughlin's formula, and that's the stuff that Alcone sells, and like the whole, it's like a weird.
Yeah,
and everybody quits making it after a couple of months. Everybody goes nuts and quits.
Yeah, it's a pain. I mean, some of the last batches of foam that I got from George was just not working right, and he did something where he didn't have enough of something in it, and it would be, a fraction of a gram would make a difference of it gelling in the bowl or not gelling at all.
Oh, really?
And it was making me nuts. I mean, I was kind of happy. I like doing all that. I used to, in the old days, I did everything myself. Made the molds, I ran the foam and all that stuff, and quite enjoyed it. But after a while, it's like that foam rubber stuff. You could spend the day just mixing foam and trying to get it to work and not have it. And so I was quite happy to give up making foam rubber and
let somebody else do it.
Yeah, and same with molds too. Working with fiberglass and all that stuff. It's like the odd one now and then is fun, but every day not so fun.
Yeah, there's like a zen-like quality to making a mold, like walling it up, and especially like the more complicated ones that you really have to think about. And it's kind of nice to zone out and just work on a mold.
Yeah,
where it doesn't have to be like art. It doesn't have to be a sculpture. It doesn't have to look like something. It just has to be like a precise, functional, like this. It's kind of a nice way to change gears sometimes.
Yeah, and another name I don't know a lot of people know is like Gunnar.
Gunnar Ferdinandson.
Who's like he was the mold maker in the Mold Makers Union that could actually make a mold that you could use for makeup purposes. And he was really precise, really great mold maker. And
I heard a story about him making a mold where he would lay a string over the sculpture, and he would do the whole plaster thing, and then at a certain point he would just rip the string out, and that's how he would make a quick 2-piece mold.
It's an old school technique. Yeah, I tried it. It's really timing is really critical. Yeah. And I remember getting a book on molding and casting that had that technique in it, and which is kind of how I learned some of the stuff about making molds from that book, because there weren't schools and things and YouTube and that stuff, but yeah, Gunnar, was a great mold maker, and he did beautiful molds. Yeah.
Did you, when you closed up shop, did you keep any Gunnar molds? You could look at them.
I don't know. Now that I think about it, I mean, Gunnar made the mold for Sydney, my gorilla that I made and played in The Incredible Shrinking Woman. I think I might have kept that mold. I would think that I would have, but I don't really remember.
What did you had like a Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of basement full of molds? What did you keep out of all of that stuff when you?
Yeah, I mean, this part of my 60,000 square foot studio was storage. About 30,000 square feet of it, and a lot of those were molds. And in one, you do a film like How the Grinch Stole Christmas, we had thousands of molds.
Yeah.
And or Planet of the Apes, and it got to the point where like a lot of the Grinch molds I threw out right away because I thought I'm never going to use one of these who knowses again. I did save the Grinch character molds, which I still kept those.
Yeah.
I mean, I kept a lot of the important, like the the big movie, like
iconic stuff.
Harry molds and American Werewolf molds.
Full size Mighty Joe Young. You have that sitting in the garage.
I have the head mold, yeah. But and a lot of the old stuff too. I kept a lot of my old molds that I made myself.
Yeah. I want to see that. Post some of those pictures on Twitter for us.
Old molds?
Yeah, I want to see the stuff. Yeah, your molds.
They're not very
Did you
pretty.
give anything else to Bob Burns? Did he take anything?
Well, not so much when I was moving out of the shop, because Bob's got a lot of my stuff already.
Right.
And he's got too much stuff for the room that he has now, But Bob was always because I'm kind of a pack rat, and I hate to throw stuff out. And to me, it's like part of movie history, even if it's a shitty movie,
Yeah.
Incredible Melting Man, it's still a part of the Incredible Melting Man. There's somebody like Danny Wagner who, loves that movie, So, I kind of think everything, it's part of that, but it costs money to keep stuff,
Oh, yeah.
and when you have 30,000 square feet of storage, it's like not cheap. And it just got to the point where I destroyed molds like crazy.
I remember when I came by to buy my work tables from you,
Uh-huh.
watching you guys fill up dumpster after dumpster.
Yeah, we had 15 of those big roll-off dumpsters filled to the brim. Sometimes we had one that was 15 tons, and you're only supposed to put 10 in it.
Oh,
So we
geez.
got into trouble. But again, like I said, I'm not good at math, but if you do
Yeah.
15 dumpsters at 10 tons each, it's a lot of molds.
Jeez.
A lot of stuff.
And it practically killed me too.
What, getting rid of the stuff?
We were in the storage place. There was it was divided. There was a wall with like a roll up door, and the mold parts were in the back, and we were sticking these big epoxy dome molds on these shelves, these rolling carts that we had that were we originally made to put in the oven, or we had a big walk-in oven. You could roll these carts in, and we put all the molds in and roll in and bake it.
Yeah.
It's this welded steel thing. So it had this big, giant mold of I think it was like this kind of Saucer Man inspired, Invasion of the Saucer Man inspired. Paul Blaisdell's another name. Do you know who Paul Blaisdell is?
Yeah, he's one of the guys that Bob Burns learned from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did the AIP makeup effect stuff. But anyways, rolling this cart out with this mold sitting on top shelf, and the mold was higher than the opening of the door, and I wasn't really looking up, and it was pushing it, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, this huge mold hits me on the head, and Aryan, who was helping me at that day, just about to say, "Look out," which I'm glad he didn't, because I probably would have looked up, and
Oh, no.
and then I got, just really busted my face. And fortunately, it just kind of hit me in the back of the head and bounced off. And I was kind of loopy, but, and they're saying, maybe you better go to the hospital. I go, no, I think I'm okay. I kind of don't have double vision and stuff, but I was thinking about what's her name, Liam Neeson's wife that died from that.
I don't know.
She had a skiing accident, just bumped her head and died. And I just said, don't tell my wife, because she'll make me go to the hospital. I don't want to go. I'm sure I'm all right. And then the next day, my wife came to the shop, and Art Sakamoto, who was helping us get rid of stuff too, said, "Is Rick all right?"
Oh, no.
I said, "What?" He goes, "Well, you got hit in the head with that mold." I
The
said,
day
"What?"
we almost lost Rick.
Yeah. But yeah. Okay, what next?
What next? No,
So
your turn. What next?
We talked about a little bit of the history, and let's talk about current. Is there anybody out there right now? I don't know how closely you follow the current trends, but is there anybody that's doing anything that inspires you? Like, what is inspiring you today?
I think that's one of the other reasons I got out of makeup too, is because there's so many good people now. It's like there's a lot of great people. I had this Japanese guy that I sponsored, Kazuhiro Tsuji, that I guaranteed him 3 years worth of work and brought him over from Japan, and he does some brilliant stuff. It seems like everything he does is like perfection. He's kind of gotten out of the makeup business and is going into more like fine art. And he did that big Dick Smith head, and now he's doing a bunch of other artists and
stuff
things.
like that. Yeah.
I was actually kind of disappointed that he decided to get out of makeup, though, because I really thought he was going to be the next in line and carry on the craft, you know.
Well, wasn't it that the business end of it like kind of frustrated him, like it frustrates most people?
Yeah, well, because he never had to deal with that part of it. You know, I was the one that had to deal with that stuff, you know, and when he started out on his own and had to deal with it, it just made him nuts, you know, like, which doesn't take long, you know. And
Yeah.
he obviously was a lot smarter than I am because it didn't take him long to get out, you know. But Arian, who I work with on Maleficent, is another one who is amazing. I mean, he can do anything and does it better than anybody. You know, it's like perfection. And there's a lot of good people out there. Christian Tinsley's doing some nice stuff. You know, Joel's doing some nice stuff.
Joel Harlow.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of good people. And what amazes me is, you know, there was a time when, like when I started doing this stuff, I remember when I was first approached about Greystoke, which is a Tarzan movie, which is a new one opening up this week, I guess.
Ooh, yeah, new Tarzan movie.
Yeah.
I'm not really all that interested.
Yeah, me either, actually. You know, but I'll probably, I kind of think I have to see it since I did a Tarzan movie, you know, with guys in suits, you know. But when it first came around, when Robert Towne was going to direct it, he had crazy expectations of what he wanted the apes to do. And he had a list of things. He had read Jane Goodall's books and based a lot of the script that he wrote on that. But he wanted to see the veins throbbing in their arms and every one of them and all these things that you just couldn't do.
Yeah.
You know, I said, well, yeah, on an insert, yeah, but you know, because I want everyone anytime, you know, for this to happen. And I said, you know, there's not enough people that do this kind of work to do. And he had the number of apes he wanted and everything else. And I said, there's just not enough people. And he goes, the world's a big place. You know, there's got to be people around the world that can do this. And I go, there isn't. You know, I mean, there, you know, yeah, there was Stuart Freeborn in England, but there wasn't very many people. You know, and
Freeborn and Tucker was over there.
Yeah, and that was about it at that time. You know, and at that time, even I didn't even know about Chris Tucker.
Wait a second. Wait, I knew a name that you didn't know.
No, I knew Chris Tucker, but I think at that point in my life. It was before the Elephant Man, and you know, before people knew who Chris Tucker was.
Yeah.
But he said, "Well, surely there's somebody in the world that can do this stuff." I go, "Yeah, you know, there isn't." You know, now it's amazing. You know, like Makeup Artist Magazine does that section where they have people from around the world, and you see people from countries that you wouldn't even think would do this stuff doing amazing makeups and fake heads and things, and it's just like when I did Greystoke in '82, I guess it was, when I was in England. I hired a lot of people that worked for Henson and worked on Dark Crystal and things, but they didn't understand the kind of way that I wanted to make things, and they didn't quite understand the molding and the casting and what a finished product was so much. You know? And there were some great sculptors that they could block out the forms beautifully, but couldn't do the detail, and they didn't know how to do that stuff. And it was like pulling teeth to get them to finish the sculpture, and that's one reason I sculpted all the main apes myself in Greystoke, you know. But when I did the Wolfman, you know, many years later, everybody does it the same way, you know. And they have Mitch Devane tools that, you know, that Mitch was the first one that I knew that made his own sculpting tools to do texturing with, and you know, with little brass tubes and you know, saws and you know, guitar strings and things, and you know, go to England, you know, on the Wolfman, everybody's got one of those things. They're all doing the same way. You know, really changed. You know.
Well, I mean, you kind of revolutionized how a lot of people. I mean, the same way that Dick Smith revolutionized how a lot of people do stuff. You did a whole nother revolution of how everybody does things. You know, Dick shared all of his information and got it out to a lot of people. But then when you went over and did that movie, you taught all of those people. Yeah,
Greystoke was like they were saying that was like makeup school in England, you know, and the people that worked for me, I mean, they still refer to it as, you know, like the most amazing experience. They learned so much and all that, you know. But yeah, you know, we had a sound stage. There was this big stage that they had the jungle set on, and right next to it there was a stage where we built the apes. And I said, I want to have everything in one place. And we got a stage, and then we just built walls, and we had different departments. This is the machine shop. This is the mold shop. This is where we paint the stuff. This is where Rick lives and does his stuff. You know, it's like, you know. And
so you still had your own little private.
Yeah,
workspace?
I don't. You know, I mean, I learned as a kid in my bedroom by myself, and that's the way I like to work, is by myself in a quiet room, and without people talking and stuff, distractions. And so that's what I had there too. And I had on my big shop too. I had my own floor basically. That was where my studio was, right in my thing.
Yeah, I think I only saw that room once, but it was cool.
Yeah.
It's like my workshop. It was just yours, and then you had like 10 times that downstairs. It's pretty awesome.
I used to think if I had a 2-car garage, I'd be set for life. Because when I grew up, when I started doing the stuff I did in my bedroom, and we didn't even have a garage. We had a carport. It was a little cheap house that I grew up in. Garage just seemed like such a luxury.
Now, is there a dream job that you wish would have come across your plate, or something that you really wanted to do, or redo, or something that?
Yeah, I fortunately I've done a lot of the things that I wanted to do. I mean, my quest early on was to make the ultimate gorilla suit, and I was able to do that, so I got that out of my system. And I wanted to do kind of a big Wizard of Oz kind of fantasy thing, and I think the Grinch was kind of like that, I definitely wanted to do werewolves, and I got to do a number of those, So the one thing I didn't really get to do was like a Frankenstein. I would really, because Frankenstein was the film in the Jack Pierce makeup, was the thing that really inspired me more than anything to do this for a living, or as a hobby back then, but the problem is I'm so in love with the Karloff monster, that you got on your shirt.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, I got my werewolf.
All the people in video can see all this.
Yeah, I don't know where. Anyways, I would have liked to do a Frankenstein film, but I also think I'm afraid to do a Frankenstein film because I would want to make it Boris Karloff,
Right.
They wouldn't want that, So. But yeah, I would have liked to have done that, and I think that's kind of why I'm doing my little CG Frankenstein movie now.
Yeah, now you get to do whatever way you want.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about Bob Burns a little bit earlier in the podcast, and I wanted to ask you this for a while. I know, were you one of the people that was working on his haunts when you were when they were in full swing? Were you one of the artists that would help make those come to life?
Yeah, and I have to talk about Bob Burns too a lot, because Bob was the first guy that I met in the industry that knew about makeup and stuff, and is somebody that I read about in my monster magazines, and the way this came about, when I was 13, Universal Studios started the tour, and because I was becoming a teenager, my parents asked what I wanted for my birthday. They wanted to try to do something special, and I said I would like to go to Universal and go to the tour. And my thinking was I was going to, hop off the tram and run to the makeup department and meet Bud Westmore and get a job, But actually, on the way to Universal, I knew that from Don Post Studios was near Universal, and I saw Don Post on a local morning talk show, and he mentioned that his studio was by Universal. So when we got close to Universal, I asked my dad if we could stop and see if we could find Don Post Studios. So we stopped right across the street from where Barris Customs Car is, which I was excited about because he did the Monster Coach and the Batmobile, and looked up, and Don Post was listed in the phone book. Which, do they even have phone books now?
There's
they do,
a thing called
but
Google.
they're not as
Google.
yeah.
Yeah, they renamed it.
Yeah, but and I was incredibly shy. I got my dad to call, and he called Don Post, and he said, we're came from kind of far away, and we're out here in the area, and my son's really, he makes masks, and he would love to come by and visit. And they said, sure, come on by. So we went to his place, which was on Cleon Avenue in Burbank at the time, and Vern Langdon was working there at the time, and Vern showed us around and gave us a nice tour. And in the office, which I also thought was really cool, they had a bookcase that was the door to go into the main shop. So it didn't look like there was a door, and open this bookcase
super
and go
cool.
in. Yeah. There was a picture of Bob Burns, a couple pictures of Bob Burns in his Mad Mummy suit and his Kogar gorilla suit, which they made at Don Post Studios, and had his phone number on it. So I wrote it down. And
Sneaky.
yeah, and so after the Universal tour, where I didn't really get to meet Bud Westmore or anybody, I got my dad to call Bob Burns, and the same thing. My son makes monsters, and he's read about you in the magazines. Is there any way we can meet? And Bob and Kathy said, "Sure, come on over." They invited us all over. We spent a really nice evening in his little place on Valley Street. There, he had a much smaller place then, and chock full of just everywhere with boxes with full cool stuff in it.
Called high functioning hoarding. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Bob was very generous with his information and time, and told me that he showed me how to do a mortician's wax gash. Almost, now that I think about it, I think it was right here where I have this scar now on my arm.
What's that scar from?
I something I did
Mold
recently.
falling on your arm?
Happened when I was moving the shop, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But anyways,
scars.
he told me about mortician's wax, and he was using Max Factor pancake makeup, and told me that Max Factor sells this stuff on Hollywood Boulevard. And became a friend, and it's through Bob. Bob introduced me to a makeup artist that he used to work at the local CBS station, which was on Sunset, Sunset and Gower, and brought me in to meet the makeup artist that does the newscasters and stuff, and a guy named J. Grant Wilson was his name, and he was like blown away by the stuff that I was doing. I was like 13 or maybe 14 when I met him, and eventually he took me to the union, the makeup union. He said, "I got to have the business rep talk with you." And I went to the makeup union, which was on Chandler Boulevard, in this little crappy house. And, which even then I thought, really, this is the makeup union? This is like a dump, And
Is there a red light on the porch?
Yeah, that was in the back. But at this meeting, the business rep basically told me to give up and that I was never going to get in. And he said that the kind of makeups that I wanted to do, those jobs were few and far between, and most of the time I'd be mopping sweat off of some bitchy actress. But he said, "You're never going to get in. You have to be 21 to get in to serve an apprenticeship. The apprenticeships are going to go to a Westmore or or a Nye or a Dawn, one of the people that are already in, or one of their friends, not you."
So everybody pay attention to this. So quit makeup school, go to Noman, quit Noman, and then give up because the union doesn't like you.
But I didn't accept it. To me, it was like, I can't believe that if I'm good at something, that somebody's not going to use me.
Yeah.
So I showed them that I was right.
Stick it to them.
Yeah. But I forgot, where was I going with this?
We were talking about Bob Burns.
Bob Burns.
Yeah. So Bob was, a generous help to me. But so, he did these Halloween shows. So I was involved in the Exorcist one. And there was another one that he did with a gorilla suit where we did tag team gorillas. Bob had this thing he used to do at Magic Mountain, this gorilla skit thing with this guy, Charlie Dugdale, who was one of the announcers at his CBS station, played this like animal trainer guy. And Bob was in a cage at Magic Mountain, and he would talk about he had this trained gorilla, and he had this authority stick that he trained him with. And then,
that's actually how I control all the people that work for me.
Yeah, well, it works. I did that too. Yeah. Then what happens? He shows that he's got the gorilla trained, and at one point, the gorilla grabs the authority stick and then breaks out of the cage, and everybody runs. So they did that as a Halloween show. But you can, wearing a gorilla costume is a hard work, and you can only do it for so long. So we did tag team gorillas. So Kogar, his Bob's suit, was. Though I don't remember if at that point I redid Bob's suit.
Was it Kogar and then Tracy?
Yeah. So I did the Tracy head for him, which he may have had in that show. I think he did. Actually, it wasn't the old Kogar head. And then I had my suit, which was the Thing with Two Heads suit that I kind of redid. And I got to, the Thing with Two Heads story is funny, actually. I had a, I'd always, started early on. I wanted to make a gorilla suit, and it was an expensive endeavor. my parents didn't have any money. I grew up very lower middle class. I would get a quarter a week allowance sometimes when they could afford it.
Was it Bob that got you like obsessed with the gorilla stuff? Was it because of that?
Kind of, yeah. I always thought they were. I mean, King Kong was cool and stuff like that. And I liked gorilla suits in movies and stuff. But Bob when I met Bob, he had a gorilla suit, and he told me about Charlie Gamora is another name, important name in makeup history. He was the lab man at Paramount, but he was made the greatest gorilla suits that had ever been made.
Jason Barnett just made like a little documentary.
A great documentary on it.
I haven't seen it yet, but I'm aware of it.
It's really very informative. I highly recommend it. But Charlie, and he made these. I think some of the first gorilla suits ever in film, and he was in silent movies and in Laurel and Hardy movies and Our Gang things, But where was I going with this?
Thing with two heads.
Thing with two heads. Yes, exactly. So, I'm 66 years old almost. The brain's going.
Sure?
Yeah. Wait, maybe I'm 70. Yeah.
Well, you're bad with math. We've already established
That's right. Yeah.
Let's just stick to the gorilla suits.
What comes after 66? Yeah.
Potato.
Yeah. So it was hard to make a gorilla suit on
a 25 cents a week.
Yeah. And, I'd get $1 if I mowed a lawn for somebody, and so, but I had made a head and with an articulated jaw that just opened, and I got a little bit that fake fur. It was hard to find anything in those days. They had shiny jet black, really crappy fake fur that I got. And I made like some arms, and there was a George Burroughs, who was another great gorilla performer, was on the Beverly Hillbillies episode where they put a pair of overalls on him. And I thought, well, if I put overalls, I don't have to make a whole suit. So I had a suit with overalls, but I wanted a picture that looked like I had a whole gorilla suit. So I took a photograph where I kind of held my hands up, kind of covered the fact I didn't really have a chest, and, framed it down here. So it's like arms and a gorilla head. And I had that picture in my wallet. And I did a film in South America, a piranha movie. First time I ever went out of the country when I was like 20, which was this disastrous film where I had numerous near-death experiences. And
those are the good ones.
Yeah, and was making $50 a day, and I had to buy my makeup supplies with that money too.
That's better than a quarter a week.
Yeah, exactly. But there was a stunt guy in the film, and I showed him one day, we were talking, and I showed him that picture of my gorilla suit. So shortly after that, he was they were doing this film called The Thing with Two Heads, where they needed a two-headed gorilla. Well, it was a one-headed gorilla that got a transplanted head, and they removed it. And he was the stuntman on that film, and they said, "Do you know anybody has a gorilla suit?" And he goes, "I do." So he called me up. So I went into this meeting and with that picture, and with a head that I had in that picture, and they said, "Well, the problem is we need a second head. He has to have two heads, and would you be able to make another head for your suit?" And I go, "Yeah, sure, I can do that." And when do we start filming? And he go, 2 weeks. And I went, okay. Well, that's going to be tough to make it in 2 weeks, but I can do it. So I had to make a gorilla suit in 2 weeks by myself, a two-headed gorilla suit. So, and it was 2 weeks of working day and night. And part of the problem too was just trying to find materials. I again, like I said, fake fur was hard to find. I ended up driving to, when the first day was today, the day I was going to get all my materials. So I went to Westwood Ceramics, where I used to buy my plaster and clay, and I drove into La Cienega. I remember seeing a place that had some fur bedspreads, some fake fur bedspreads. So I went to this place that had this fake fur bedspread that wasn't just jet black. It was it looked kind of cool. It had longer kind of guard hairs and then lighter colored hairs underneath. And I thought, well, this would be good. So I bought this bedspread, and that's what I used for the fur. Sewed it together myself. The problem was, and it's hard to make a suit for yourself and try to even see what the back of it looks like in your bedroom or your parents' house, and a two-headed gorilla suit at that, So I mean, I had a really tight schedule. I got all this, I got the suit kind of pretty much together, and then I realized once I saw pictures of the suit that when the fur would wrinkle, all the long guard hairs would mash together and it looked like a stripe. And so it kind of looked like a striped gorilla in this film, you know.
Zebra gorilla.
Yeah, but what I ended up doing after that film, I sprayed the whole thing with acrylics and painted it. And that's what I ended up using for Bob's Halloween show. So.
Yeah, that worked out.
Very cool.
And Bob has that suit now in his.
Is that the one that they made like a display for? That he's got that's sitting on a chair.
No, that's the Tracy's.
That's okay.
We have always asked this question to every guest we have on the show, and you should be no exception. Words of wisdom. The words of wisdom you would give to the young pro getting started in the business today. What would you say to them?
Come on.
Learn CG stuff. No, but I seriously, I do think they should.
No, that is true, right?
No, I mean, I think learn Photoshop, learn ZBrush, have an understanding of how that stuff works. Because what's going to happen is they're going to try to replace your makeup with CG stuff, and it happens a lot now. But also just learn as much as you can about anatomy, about sculpture, about everything. About color. People. I mean, I'm always surprised when someone is surprised that I can paint. And they go, "You can paint?" And I go, "Yeah, I mean, it's kind of part of what I do, and then you can sculpt, if they have something that looks like a sculpture, like a bronze, you sculpted that?" And they go, "Yeah, and look at this shit I sculpted, look at every pore that's on this thing,
Yeah.
I sculpted that too, people just don't understand the process. But I mean, any artistic, creative thing, I think, you should study and get good at, because it all works into the mix. It's not just, it's not just makeup school. I mean, you'll learn certain things in makeup school. And also, it's not, the problem I have with makeup schools is that, I mean, I had to learn through trial and error. And I know what an undercut is from making a mold that I couldn't open up.
Yeah, locking a mold.
Yeah. And like every episode of Face Off.
No, I never locked a single mold on Face Off.
Oh, okay, good.
Never.
But somebody must have on that.
Everybody else did.
Yeah,
not me.
yeah. But you learn, I know why I do things a certain way. And I had to figure out how to do a lot of things. And it made me, problem solve in a way. And I think that a lot of people that go to a makeup school, they're taught this is how you do it. And they do it that same way every time, no matter what the thing is. And I always took I had pride in the fact that I would try to gear what I was doing to the film, and make the right choice, like Ed Wood, it was very subtle, small little pieces, Harry and the Hendersons, it was a radio controlled animatronic head, and, Videodrome, it was like, God, I don't know how we came up with the stuff we had to do in that film, but yeah, it's just, you can't learn too much, and you can learn from anybody, I mean, I like to watch other people do makeups, and you always pick up something, and you can learn from some little kid who will say something that you
like Bella.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a little girl on Twitter named Bella, and her mom Jessie has been stalking Rick for a long time, and Bella and Rick are now pals. And what's Bella? She's like 8, right?
I think she's like 9 now.
8 or 9.
But she was even younger than that. Yeah, she did this great. Her mom posted a thing on my Twitter at the Rick Baker, and get your Famous Monsters shirt.
Oh, that's your painting, huh?
It is.
Yeah.
Yes. Of my werewolf.
Yeah.
Bella became fascinated with makeup, and she saw on YouTube the American Werewolf transformation, and did her own version. And she did a hand that was like the stretched out hand.
Change your hand.
Yeah.
Super cool.
And it was just plasticine, and she took this shot where she, it was held up, and she was like making this face like she was and Jessie posted this with a nice little note about how she was fascinated. And I loved seeing that some young person was interested in makeup, because it used to be, I mean, in the 80s, when, after American Werewolf and that stuff came out, it became very popular, and I used to get mail from people all over the place, and then those kind of stopped, and around 2000 it would rarely get anything, and
So send Rick fan mail.
Yeah, I won't answer it, but
That's all right. I don't answer the emails that come from CreatureGeek.
Yeah. But yeah, it warmed my heart to see a 8-year-old girl doing this, and so I helped her out a little bit.
Yeah, Bella's a cool kid.
Yeah.
So that's the second lesson is quit makeup school, quit Noman, give up because the union doesn't like you, and then send Rick some fan mail.
And he won't answer it. No, but I mean, you can never learn too much, and I, like I said, I like learning new things. That's why I'm doing this CG stuff, and it's just, you put all that information in there, and you never know when it's going to pay off, so.
Yeah, so when somebody decides to make another good Frankenstein movie and they call you when you come out of retirement, then you have all this stuff ready to go.
That would be awesome.
I don't think it's going to happen. I'm enjoying being retired way too much, and I'm my own boss now. I can just do what I want, and I love it.
Would you come out for the right show?
When I first retired, I said yes. But, if something came along, if they let me do it right, and if there was adequate time and adequate money. But I don't know now. I seriously don't know. It's just, I do love where I'm at right now so much that I don't know that I would want to jump back into the craziness of the film industry, and I mean, I do miss the camaraderie and, having other, talented people as work to look at and be inspired by, that was one of the things, like I said, I had my own, when I would sculpt or design and stuff, I would be able to have my own private room. But another thing is it's good to walk away from things. That's something I learned a long time ago. I mean, it used to be, I would sculpt everything in one sitting, and that was it. Today I sculpt, next day I mold it, and it's usually when I lay it down and I'm molding it, I kind of see that I didn't really finish the underneath part, and that was in the day when I used to sit at a table and sculpt. Before I stand and sculpt now. Yeah. On sculpture stand and get back and look at things and stuff. But I've learned that it's nice to try to get fresh eyes on something, so put it, if you can set it aside for a day, then come back and look at it the next day, and you see things you didn't see that first day, so that's important. It's important to try to, I always wish there was a way you could flip a switch in your head and see something for the first time, that you've been working on.
Yeah.
It's hard to be objective about it, I mean, I find that a lot when I do makeup. So when you're doing a makeup in the makeup trailer, and you're trying to beat the clock, and you get it done, and you go on set, and they go and get dressed, and you're cleaning up, you're getting your makeup stuff together just a little while before you see to get on set, and you just in that little time, that break, you'll see something you didn't see in the trailer when you were just doing one step after another.
Yeah.
And I think another important thing is not to be afraid to fix something or change something. Sculpturally, I've made this mistake so many times, and I even though I give this advice to people, I'll still make the mistake not to start the detail too soon. I would always do that. I always was fascinated by all the little wrinkles and things, and would start to, do that way too soon before the forms were there. And then you get the whole thing kind of completed, then you look at it and you go, it's like formless. It's got great texture, but it's formless. And then like, I just spent hours doing that, and it's like, you gotta whoosh over it and make the forms right.
Fix
first.
All the forms.
So, I can't tell you how many times would throw away, days of work because it wasn't as good as it needs to be, and I'll do that. I've done it with my digital stuff, my Frankenstein digital model, I've modeled a couple times now and redone the rigs a couple times because it just wasn't as good as it needs to be, but it was kind of a learning process.
Yeah. Keep pushing yourself.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to make mistakes.
That's right. And push yourself.
Is it going to cost us another $20 to have you back on again at some point?
Well, now that I've been here and done this, I think it's going to be more like $40.
All right, Patreon, chip up.
No, I'll come back some other time. Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd
We
be
gotta get the air
excellent.
conditioning fixed.
Yeah, this stupid vent, it doesn't blow. I bet you as soon as we open the door, the whole shop's going to be 70 degrees.
Of course, if people want to find you online, you have a pretty big digital footprint. Although you're not on. Are you on Instagram or are you
I'm
just
not
on
on Instagram.
Twitter?
I'm not on Facebook. I'm only on Twitter.
On Twitter.
At the Rick Baker.
At the Rick Baker.
And there's a lot of cool pictures. It's not so much about things that I say. It's more I post pictures.
Yeah.
Can't say much on Twitter, anyways.
Yeah.
But there's it's kind of like a diary of what I'm doing, at the time. And I post a picture. I had a couple, paintings and sculptures I'm working on, and post in progress pictures of them. And there's also a lot of old, cool stills from things that I've done.
Yeah, I love seeing the old stuff.
Yeah.
There's got to be a book in you at some point, right? You're going to be doing a book?
Yeah, someday, hopefully, there'll be a book on me. Yeah. So I'm not forgotten.
You should do your own book because it'd be awesome. There'd be all kinds of really cool pictures, things that nobody would be able to have seen before.
Yeah,
so.
well, I've got a lot of material, so we'll see what happens. But books are hard.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, like I was saying about people that how fast you're forgotten. I'll see these things of the masters of makeup. Somebody did like a triangle of these people, and it's like I'm in there, Dick Smith's in there, Tom Savini, Glenn Hettrick's in it.
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Jack Pierce, but not. You don't see John Chambers in some of them. You don't see.
Yeah, you see the tattooed marshmallow, but not John Chambers.
Yeah, tattooed marshmallow. And it's like
I think that was a joke picture, by the way. I think that there was a joke that somebody put Glenn's face in there.
Oh, okay. I hope so. But also, Tom Berman. Tom was instrumental in makeup effects, and you don't hear his name crop up that much. And Tom, he was the one that really the Planet of the Apes. The look of the Planet of the Apes character was Tom's sculpture, the very first one.
Oh,
they
really?
did a number of things that were. And he was the one that did more like the little kind of button-nosed chimp and stuff. And that's kind of what became the Planet of the Apes.
No shit, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And Tom, I think Tom was one of the first people to use the credit special makeup effects.
Mm.
So there, yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay.
There we go. We'll have Rick on again, and he could tell us about the credits. The credits of special makeup effects.
Well, thank you so much for being on this episode of Creature Geek. It's amazing to have you on, and you are a true legend. And obviously, we'd love to have you back on again. And you probably got tons of stories in you, so we'd love to have you. But thank you for being a part of the show.
It was my pleasure.
And once again, at the Rick Baker on Twitter. If you'd like to follow Frank and I, it's frank@bolito.com or lenperalta.com. Those are our names on Twitter as well. Thanks to the folks at Tested for giving us a home. If you'd like to give to Patreon, if you'd like to hear more of us, more per month, more great guests,
Rick Baker's only going to get more and more expensive.
That's right. Go to patreon.com/CreatureGeek. You can also visit our website. It's creature-geek.com. And that's it. Thank you so much, Rick, for being on the show.
My pleasure.
And we look forward to having you on once again. We'll see you on the next episode of Creature Geek coming up probably next week.
Yep.
Take care.